fathers and mothers, we feel so much. Children are taken from us wrongfully. But Mark has reminded us of a dad. That a dad has to be in the fight too. And Marcus already has been there fighting for his son since day one. Never missed a day in court, people. Not one day in court. There. So all of this, this Juneteenth, when they said the first amendment that we want is the amendment to vote, they said we're going to give you the 13th amendment in rich slavery. When they said we want the amendment to give us the right to vote, they said we'll give you the 14th amendment for equal protection of the laws. But our people said we're still in these uniforms. Must we march on Washington? Must we bring our guns to Washington to get our right to vote? So 5 years later, in 1870, they gave the 15th Amendment. And we have fought since over and over and over again, decade after decade, generation after generation, century after century. And we won't stop. We won't stop. We are unstoppable because we will not stop until a multi-racial democracy is a reality in this nation. Thank you.
And when we speak of a multi-racial democracy, the work that's being done to create it on the ground. You heard C.K. Hawkins saying, I won't fight in the courtroom. We can fight from the side, but we need to be able to fight on the ground. It's my pleasure to bring to us for some work. We have two of our people are going to have to get on the plane to leave. So that they've been here and then they have a 5, 6 o'clock plane that they've got to take. So we're going to go a little point of privilege to get it out so we can get the essence of their experience to be shared. And folks, what I want to call to your attention is that, I said it before and I'll say it again. We're not here to rehash, to talk about what we've come through. What we're here to do today is to talk about combating the vicious attack on voting rights that's here right now, and what we're doing to overcome it, what we need every community to do to overcome it. With that, Latasha Brown and Desmond Dean are going to have to leave. After they make their remarks, I'm going to ask Latasha to go first, if you would. And the question that she's going to be dealing with is, she's been in neighborhoods all over America fighting voter suppression. She's been in the fight to eliminate drop-offs, fighting to increase, and fighting against the elimination of drop-offs, reducing polling places restrictions. She's now in Georgia in the middle of the fight. That's her home. So she's in the middle of the fight. And the question we've got to ask for you, Latasha, is, what practices have you found that find that to be effective with regards to what's happening and where we're headed in this midterm election?
Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. Amen. I wanted to start this off as I often do, just to kind of center as the states have known that there's not just a tax movement, there's a spirit of movement, right? And part of what makes the change, right, is the fact that you got the best plan, you got to have the strongest belief. And so I'm saying that because as we're doing this work, there's a couple of things, I'll say some of the lessons. The first thing we have to do is we got to get our people to believe, but not to believe in this system. Because the truth of the matter is, how many of y'all ain't going to vote? I know I have felt times where I didn't want to vote. There were people that I voted for. How many of y'all have been let down? All about people that you voted for. How many of you all have literally been a part of the process? I'm going to ask everybody, I always do this, to close your eyes. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to hear this question with your heart. And those that are even joining us on the internet. My question to you is, what would America look like without racism? Just sit it. What would America, listen to the question. What would America look like without racism? Now you can open your eyes. I know that's not a lot of time. Some of y'all like, well, I don't even know how to get through this, right? I know some folks, I mean, it might not be America, right? And there's others that have all kinds of issues around them. But I think it's really important. The reason why I asked that question is there is nothing that has been brought into existence in the physical world that was a person vision. And so the ultimate question for us is not to continue to respond to what already exists. We already know they have limited vision. At the end of the day, they can't even see the humanity of our people. Right? So we're not going to be bound by somebody else's lacking vision. What that means, the second point, I think in our work is really being able to get people to think about what their vision is. What is their radical reimagination of how we move in this country. We have to look at new systems. We have to shift new things in this world. We have to really be able to get people to see another outlet. The third, the final thing is, don't take no rocket science. You got to organize. Organize power is real power. All the light bulb does, the light bulb was an invention, and we're talking about electricity with Edison, but all the energy already existed. It was a matter of literally how do you get that energy directed and focal at a focal point, and literally that energy is able to come together and transform. Transform creates life. That's the same thing with us. When we're organizing people, so part of the work that we've done in Black Lives Matter, I'll just say this as I close out. Part of the work that we've done is really focus on organizing in a couple ways. We organize money, we organize message, we organize around organization. And so in terms of money, we've actually supported and invested over $10 million to over 800 Black-led groups. Grants on the ground that are doing the work for all on the front line. The second thing, we even say to ourselves, that's why we don't have Black Lives Matter chapters. We're not trying to do empire. We literally see ourselves as special ops, soldiers on the ground. Because every once in a while, you got to call your Navy SEALs in. They're like, what y'all do? We here, what you need? I just got to call you special forces in. Right? And so, but the real soldiers are the ones on the front line that when something happens to you, they're going to be called. And then the third thing, related to that, is around messaging. That we wanted to shift this notion that Black people didn't have power. We wanted to shift this notion that we're the majority of Black folks, Christian, live in the South, that we ain't without power in Texas, and in Georgia, and in Alabama. That ground is still wet with the blood of our saints. Y'all think anybody take that back? You think that we're not going to literally have a space that we're going to shift that? And so I'm raising that because we have to actually operate off that intention that we have the power to create and make that change. The final thing around our strategy has been around culture. We sing, we feed. If you come to Black Lives Matter, then we're going to have some food. You'll have some music. We literally tap into the culture to affirm our people who we are. Right? At the end of the day, it is a traumatic experience oftentimes to go and have this experience with somebody who mistreated you at the home. And so what we do is we create this system of unity with each other through culture so that we're feeling affirmed, that we're feeling that our agency, that we're feeling that we're seen. And so those are some of the strategies.
You know, someone once asked me the question, whether or not I thought that we had the vision to be able to encourage BIPOC organizations to come out and vote. They asked if we had the vision, the courage, to go into the deepest parts of the South, and how were we going to deal with it when they started coming at you. And I think Natasha Brown and Helen Butler would put it best, and let me just put it this way. When we were down in Georgia, there was no just Georgia Coalition of People's Agenda. There was no just Black Voters Now. If you stepped toward any of us, you had to deal with all of us. And I so pleased right now to introduce to you the person who's now going to be on our new partner, on our new vision that we're doing across the nation. And let me introduce him by this way. You know, there are 18 million formerly convicted felons throughout this country that are able to vote, but they don't know. They think that if they voted, they'd be breaking the law because they haven't been informed. It's intentional. It's intentional. And I'm very pleased to introduce Desmond Meade, who is with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. And if you have not heard, in the state of Florida, that was the zero ground for a ballot over voter restoration rights, where the citizens of the state said yes, they should be able to vote. But then the conservative legislature came back in and said, not so quick, we understand you went and amended the Constitution to have to make the vote. But we want to make it more difficult because we can't have them voting like that. Well, Desmond Meade was the person who led the fight to get the legislation in place. When they raised the bar and said they had to pay bonds, fees, and restitution, although the state of Florida couldn't tell them how much they owed to be able to vote, Desmond Meade was the lead in saying we're going to go across the nation and raise money. All right. And we're going to pay that fee so they can vote. That's the American right. It's the American thing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Desmond Meade. Desmond, I gave a little background. I know Florida has a peculiar situation regarding the restoration of the rights for citizens that are returned. Could you tell us the current state of the battle, what's going on in Florida, and what other folks can do to help out?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I definitely want to thank Transformative Justice Coalition for the Rainbow Bridge for creating this piece for us to have this discussion. And I want to thank them for having me come on as Natasha. Not saying but, you know, when I think of Florida, there's just so much that's going on. Florida's like ground zero for a whole bunch of other things. You know, Stanley Brown, we have Trayvon, we have Jordan Davis. Just so much is going on. I don't say gay fiasco that's going on. There's so much, but as it relates to voting rights for returning citizens. You know, we just recently had a case in Gainesville, Pulaski County, where we had 10 individuals that have been arrested and charged with voting illegally or registering to vote illegally. And you know, that's just one of the many obstacles we have to overcome. One of the things that I always say is that, you know, wherever people see obstacles, we see opportunities. Opportunities to organize, right? And opportunities to really elevate our fight, right? And understanding that it's not just a fight against just a particular party, it's something bigger than that. It's really a fight against this system that has been in place since the formation of this country. Has been ran by just a handful of folks who want to dictate who gets the vote. Don't get the vote, right? And it's a system that we've seen implemented on both sides of the aisle. Just keep it real, you know, especially in our majority. And so we look at these opportunities as an opportunity to actually elevate the fight and to engage even more people and to shift taxes and really elevate that we respond to things or these instances with love, right? And we respond with gratitude. And what I mean by that is that recognizing that whether it's arresting, you know, 10 returning citizens, or whether it's making it, changing voter ID laws, or million other tactics that's being used, and all of these, right, are mechanisms to knock off people off the fringes, right? And watching the work in Georgia that my sister was a part of, one of the things that inspired me is that when they tried to implement these tactics to knock off 10 votes, then we got to go out and register 10,000 votes, right? We respond to suppression with the people aggressive. That particular instance in Israel or Attaxk County, where we have 10 people who were charged, those were people who registered as Democrats and as Republicans, right? And so what we're seeing is, once again, a blatant attack against democracy, right? And trying to minimize participation in elections. We're also seeing, which I think is important, a lot of times, sometimes we miss the forest because we're looking at the trees, is a huge, one of the biggest problems in our criminal justice system, right? That don't get the attention that they deserve. Right now, 2 of those young men have accepted deals for something that they should be innocent of, right? But that is part of this criminal justice system. That is the main mechanism that actually keeps it thriving, is pleadings, right? And so we're trying to prevent the other individuals from accepting plea deals, but it is the uphill battle. The other thing that sticks out that I think is so important when we talk about how to know is that these individuals were arrested, charged, and 2 convicted of voting or registering illegally, and all of them registered while they were in the local jail. It was registered by the local supervisor of elections. Understand this, the local supervisor of elections went to the jail and sought these people out to register them. And 2 years later, that local supervisor of elections is doing all right. You got 10 people that are now re-traumatized by the criminal justice system, right? And I say that to say that in your bivocations, no matter if you're in Illinois, no matter if you're in Texas or whatever state, it is so vitally important to really connect with organizations that work with returning citizens or justice impacting people on a consistent basis, right? And make sure that you partner with these organizations because there are nuances, right? And in our zeal and in our commitment to register and engage new voters, we may overlook some of these nuances and unknowingly jeopardize the liberty of some of these individuals. And so I would say that one of the ways that you can help is to connect. If you're in Florida, connect with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. If you're in a different state, find out what organizations in your state that's working with directly impacted people, that connect with them, work in partnership. And then the last thing I would say is that, and it's kind of feeding off of what Attaxk talked about, one of the things I noticed when we passed Amendment 4, we have 1.4 million people who are eligible to vote, and so many folks was trying to read the list of all of these individuals to register and vote. The problem was the approach. The approach clearly indicated that this is nothing but a transaction, right, endeavor, which meant that you didn't care about me, right? What the only thing I was a pawn, right, in partisan games, right? That I was another vote for the party or another vote for a politician, right? The reality is that that is one of the key things that causes people to back away from participating in our democracy. What I found to be most effective is not having a conversation with someone about a party, right, about a politician, right, but having a conversation about their power and democracy. Democracy needs them more than any party or politician. And asking them and talking to them about how they exercise their power by being the lifeblood of democracy. That I found was so effective. And last but not least, and I say this again, and this is when someone asked me, well, what are your thoughts about Juneteenth? And when I think about Juneteenth, the number that sits in my head is 600,000. And the reason why is Juneteenth, we all know the story. Slaves did not find freedom in Florida, even though our legislature imposed fines as required, right? We knew that fines required only impacts about 775,000 people, which means that there is still 600,000 returning citizens living in Florida who are eligible to register to vote right now. There are millions of eligible returning citizens across the country that are eligible to register to vote right now. The problem is they don't know the free, and so charge you all for that money to educate and to inform our brothers and sisters in the modern day fallacy don't know they're free yet. Liberate them and they can take a hold of the power and change society.
I know it's a little time, right? But I also know there's a point that I wanted you to respond to. Desmond and I were able to have dinner a couple of days ago, I think, a week ago, whenever it was. But there's one point that I wanted you to bring out that you had. And I'm going to ask you this way. Could you additionally describe for everyone what the impact of the community, when we talk about the restoration to vote, right? We're not just talking about the person that's immediately incarcerated, but I want to talk a little bit about the impact of peace, who's actually impacted by that, and in giving that answer, if you could also respond to why it is that many that are formerly incarcerated don't vote and what it means to them when election day comes up.
Well, I'm gonna start with the first one. That's when they get me excited, especially when I see all the family in front of me, because your son's story played a role in really engaging our individuals. Because I don't care what community you're from, people who have been impacted by the justice system and their family members, right, actually cover the gap, right, to make the difference between whether. Matter of fact, one of the videos I showed when we were talking, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was running for president, and he gave a speech in Philadelphia, right, and how fractured about society. Well, Gage returned to citizens in Florida. The response in being able to get the vote was so overwhelming, it was so moving. And we actually see we see people who, we had I told a story of a young brother that was crying in his car, right? And he was talking about he's been watching people vote. He's actually been jealous, right? And finally, because of the passion of the before, and he actually had the right to vote and he voted. You had people who were saying, man, I don't care if it's a dog catcher race going on, I'm voting, right? And there was just this natural desire to want to be a part of it. And we were educating them enough to understand that when they vote, that they have to look at what's happening in their local level and understanding the power of DA, right? That they're elected of sheriff, that they're elected even mayors, and not just look at the top of the ticket, right? Because it's hard to move people at the top of the ticket, right? I believe in trickle up voting, right? That if you connect people to what's important to them, so when you talk about returning citizens, judicial races, sheriff races, DA races, those are important things that they can connect to. And what we've seen, especially in 2020, was not only did they show up, but they also brought their family members who were living in their household to show up as well, which is very important because those are the same people that were not going to vote because they were influenced by people like me who were saying that my vote didn't matter, right? That it don't matter who you put in office. And the only reason, I was saying that was because the one time of the year where I was meant or made to feel more of an outcast in this country was during elections. Because that's the one time when folks will be like, you are not a part of our society. You don't count. And that was so painful. And so we masked that hurt and that rejection, right, by indifference. And that indifference was impacting our circle of influence. But now that returning citizens in the state of Florida across the country are realizing their power, right? They're realizing how exponential that power is, because not only are they coming to vote to the polls, they bringing their family, they bringing their friends, they bringing their baby mama, baby daddy, right? And they're voting in numbers, right? They ain't voting by themselves. They vote like they're going to a Beyonce concert. And nobody goes to see Beyonce and Jay-Z by themselves. They bring their friends with them. And that's how they treat election days.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for taking the time to be here and to share with us. With the other members that we have of the panel, what I want to do is I want to open up and let's have this discussion as best we can. We have Helen Butler with the Georgia Coalition of the People's Agenda, as well as Joshua Rupp, former candidate for the Arkansas Secretary of State, and currently is the president and co-founder of the AAPI of Arkansas. We also have with us Reverend Todd Geary, who is just, I don't know what, Reverend, Doctor, Attorney, whatever label you want to put there, just very well recognized. Ladies and gentlemen of the panel, what should we be doing right now to get voters out, to overcome all the suppression, everything that you've heard around the country that's going on? What do we need to be doing?
Well, good afternoon. I'm Helen Butler, Executive Director of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, an advocacy nonprofit organization founded by the late Dr. Joseph Eccles Lowry. So, as a part of our mission to improve the quality of governance, that means that we have to get people educated, we have to get them motivated, we have to mobilize them, we have to protect that right to vote. And more importantly than anything, we've got to hold our elected officials accountable. We saw in Georgia massive turnout in 2020 and in 2021. But guess what? Barriers were put in place. But we're not letting that stop us, because we're doing civic engagement work 365 days a year. Like Latasha said, it's not transactional. This is a movement and a part of our life, of our livelihood. Anything that impacts you in life, some elected official made a policy that is going to affect you. So it's critical that you get engaged in this process. Register every person that you know. If you've been purged from the rolls, re-register. You can do that. Then you need to be educated about those candidates that are running for office. You can't let them just come to you and say, vote for me. Well, what does that mean? What does voting for you mean for me and my community? What dollars are you going to bring to improve my community? How is my education system going to improve? How is the criminal justice system going to improve? What kind of business opportunities will I get in my community as a result of me electing you as my elected official? So we've got to be more educated. Latasha talked about power in your vote. know the ID. If you need a ride to the mall, we have an app that you can do. There's a website called ridetothemall.com that we can take you to exercise your right to vote. They made a barrier for vote by mail. Well, guess what? You got to have ID to vote by mail. Well, we are out in the community with portable printers and copiers so that you can make copies of your ID. We have to think outside the box and do things a little differently to make sure that no one stops us from voting. Right now, we have a runoff, and we've been trained by Mother Queen election protection, right? So we are out at polling locations, assisting voters. If you have a problem, you can call 866, but we got people on the ground, boots on the ground, those foot soldiers that Dr. King talked about. We have them on the ground to help you exercise your right to vote. And if you encounter a problem, we got great lawyers that come to the rescue. So we want to make sure that you are engaged 365 days a year, not just with the Board of Elections, but with the Board of Commissioners, with your city council, with your state representatives, and with your congressmen. You've got to hold them accountable all the time. And guess what? When you hold them accountable, they'll do the right thing. If not, I think Barbara said we need great people to run for office. You've got to do that. And that's what we do at the People's Agenda. We mobilize, we educate, and we get people registered, but we get you the rights protected to be sure, and we advocate for legislation that will make a difference in our communities. And that's, if you want to join us at thepeoplesagenda.org, please join us in Georgia. And you don't have to live in Georgia, because Barbara knows we did phone banking, we did texting. So if you want to help us out, put postcards, you can help us, no matter where you are, to be engaged in this process. So that's what we're advocating for today.
Okay. So everything she said, right? But the other thing that I think is really important, I want to go back to the voter registration piece. Combating misinformation right now is critically important. And I have some data, excuse me for pulling my phone up, because I wanted to prepare for this conversation. And in the Latino community, for example, Hispanic, in 2018 in the midterm, 72% of Hispanic voters voted Democrat and 25% voted Republican. That shifted in 2020 from 59%, now mind you, shifted down. 59% voted for President Biden and 38% voted for Donald Trump. That's a 13-point shift. I can go into data about the Black community, the white community. We know in the white community it's a lot different, right? There's always that wild card piece. But mis and disinformation has been running so rampant in our communities. And so the voter education piece is even more critical. And it's not just on social media. We are seeing people who are being politicized in their churches in a very negative way to vote against their own interests. We are seeing, and we're a nonpartisan organization, I'm just reading what the data says. We are seeing attacks in ways that we never have been. Latino voters are being radicalized through YouTube. There are very few media outlets that cover what the candidates are doing. We're seeing this time and time again, and it's very targeted, very strategic, and very precision-making. I will say from a nonpartisan standpoint, for those of us who work in the voting rights space, we have to work harder. I also blame our political parties. I will say that the Democrats are playing checkers, and Republicans are playing things chess game. Their messaging is not good. So the trust in voting rights groups are even more important now than they have ever been, because we are giving information that people trust. So not buying into the hyperbole, not buying into the partisan messaging, not making it about candidates, but making it about individuals and what matters. And so I think about, what are those critical things? I think we need to go beyond just thinking about running and supporting candidates. We need to talk about investing in voting rights organizations. When we see what's happening right now, the amount of money that is being invested in candidates, and not to say that that's not important, but voting rights get about 6% of what is invested into candidates every single election. Think about how much our organizations can do to really talk about what is happening on issues if we were properly invested. So I think it's a combination of many things, but really going back to the voter education piece and being able to be trusted voices in our communities is critically important, and that happens through organizing, right? That's that person-to-person relational organizing that is so very necessary among the many other tactics that we need to use.
Thank you so much. So, following this panel, we're going to be having a reparations panel that will be coming up following this panel. So, Joshua Price, Todd Geary, your host.
Yeah, I totally agree with what both Ellen and Virginia said. I think voter education is critical. From my point of view, I was an election commissioner in Arkansas's largest, most populous county, and I was honestly shocked that we were processing the votes. For example, we had a school board election last November, 4% voter turnout. 4%. And I'm asking the community, why didn't you vote? They said, I don't know what school board does. Why don't they know what school board does? Well, we know in our country we're not really teaching civics anymore, right? So there needs to be that explanation of why is this position important? So I'd say school board. In Arkansas, it's a 5-year term. You're deciding curriculum. So, we're talking about critical race theory all across the country. However you feel about that, these folks are setting curriculum. They're setting mask mandates. However you feel about that, they're setting mask mandates. They're setting the salaries for the teachers. They're choosing the superintendent. If you have a child that's in school, that's the whole time that they're in high school. That's 4 years, and that position is a 5-year term. When you explain it like that, people say, oh, it's like a light bulb went off. That is an important position. But see, people don't know. They don't know why it's important. And I will say, for the Asian American community, there is such a distrust of government. So my mom is from the Philippines. She escaped a dictator, President Marcos. He was president for 21 years. He rigged the elections and stayed in power, even had his opponent killed. Do you think that Filipino Americans trust government in general? They're going to go march down to the clerk's office, the courthouse, to get their paperwork done? They're not. They're not. We have to go to them. As Virginia said, we have to meet people where they are. You have to go into the community. You have to find those gatekeepers, those trusted folks, those Asian American organizations. You need to go to the picnic, eat the food, dance, have a party, and get them registered to vote and explain to them why it's important. How does that impact your regular everyday life? I had an event, I'll end with this. We had an event with the Filipino community. This was 2016. It was during the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I'm at this event, and we had people there that had been U.S. citizens for 30, 40 years and had never voted. Never voted. And I asked them, why have you never voted? And they said, no one's ever asked me to. No one's ever asked me to. And again, I have an inherent trust in government because I fled. A lot of Asian Americans think about it, whether it's Vietnam, China, Korea, not the best government. So they come over here and they just have that same inherent distrust. They want to just work hard, focus on their families, focus on their work, and not have to worry about that. But then I explained to them, I said, do you pay taxes? And they said, yeah, I do pay taxes. I said, so do you think you should have a say where your tax money is going? Do you want it to go to schools? Do you want it to go to hospitals? Do you want it to go to parks? Or do you want it to go into somebody's back pocket? And again, a light bulb went off. We had an event, it was 40 people. We got 12 vote registered. 12 out of 40. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's not. That's almost 30% of the people at that party. So again, education, meeting people where they are, explaining why it's important to vote. That's how we're going to get that turnout.
Still on the mic. I want to kind of move to a different frame. Focus on the mechanics of engagement without talking about the mindset or the mentality of engagement. Whether or not you participate in the elections process is going to impact your life. You can be frustrated to the point where you say, I'm not going to vote. But the policies that will be made as a result of the position you take are going to affect your life and the lives of the people you love. Last night I heard Darius Brooks mention a comment that Reverend Jackson made. There are two things you can count on if you're going to do this work. One is ambush. The other is sabotage. So how do we do this work? We have to recognize that we fight on multiple fronts. Ambush is external. The external fight is in the courts across the country, making sure that not only do we get the restoration of Section 5, but we fight the emerging attack on Section 2. If we don't pay attention, then now we need to engage on multiple fronts where the rules have changed in several states across the country, recognizing that while we are still fighting for a federal, we still have a federal election coming. And if we're not ready, it's going to compromise the progress we make in the courts. That's ambush. Sabotage is internal. We sabotage our process and our progress because we allow frustration to be the determinative factor of when we don't like the choices we have. The choices we have are not about what's on the ballot. The choices we have are what's on the. I'm going to say that again because the mic cut out. I don't want you to miss that word. It's not what's on the ballot per se, it is what's on the agenda. Funding for communities, restoration, restitution, the panel on reparations is tied directly to what's going to happen in the elections in this midterm. It's not to have a Dr. Ron Daniels leading a panel discussion about the value of what's owed to folks who now celebrate a holiday where we cook out and don't get a bill in the mail. If we won't take the time after we finish sucking our teeth and sleeping it off to go register to vote and line up at the polls, however long it takes and whatever the weather may bring, whether they bring us water or bring us snacks, we do like we used to do when we had to get on the trailway to us. You fry you some chicken, you put some bread around it, you wrap it in foil, and you get on that bus and you ride until you get where you're going. We cannot become prey to our own sabotage. It doesn't matter how hard it may be to vote this time because of the laws they've changed. We've got to show up in numbers intentionally because we are believers in the change we demand. Otherwise, we become victims to the slavery we've adjusted to. That is my recommendation, and I endorse my own message.
I know that Barbara has an announcement that she wanted to make. We're going to ask Barbara to make that announcement, and then we're going to ask Cynthia Hoffman to close us out with something like that.
I just want to make sure that if you're here for the reparations panel, if you're here and have been part of this voting rights panel, you're all invited to join us at the reception at 6 o'clock tonight, here at this center, honoring the Ahmaud Arbery family, honoring Crystal Mason, honoring Ted Moses. Please show up and be part of that reception this evening, because in this room are heroes. I can't wait to hear Ron Daniels in the reparations panel. And I also want people to know that I just published the revised, updated 72 forms of voter suppression. So you can find it at tjcoalition.org. And Daryl, thanks, panel. Thank you for being just amazing. You are the stars that will light the skies
now we have to take what our leader, Reverend Jesse Jackson, has taught us. And you heard from all these panelists what we need to do. And we just need to do it. Because we have to start, back in the day, we didn't have the internet and all of that. And guess what? We did what we had to do. So we've got to go back to basics and do that. And I just want to thank our incredible partners. Let's give them a round of applause. You all don't know, he's a civil rights lawyer, he's a criminal defense lawyer, he's a human rights lawyer, he's an extraordinary lawyer, in addition to being chair of Transformative Justice Coalition. They are transforming the way that we view voting rights and civil rights. And they stand on the shoulders, of course, as we all do, of the great Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. So again, thank you on behalf of Rainbow Push Coalition. I see Reverend Jeanette Wilson. Thank you so much for what you do. What you do. Wrap it up. God bless you and keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive. Thank you.